Hello, everybody. We are Team 4, Eagles Abroad, and our topic is international trade theory. My name is Chase Lopez, and I'll be doing the first two slides. So to start, let's actually talk about what international trade is. Specifically, international trade deals with the purchase, sale, or exchange of goods and services across national borders. These two articles that we chose directly aligns with this. They talk about tariffs on multiple countries, a minimum global corporate tax, and they also speak about international taxation of digital companies. These digital companies that we're talking about are social media giants like Facebook, Google, or Twitter. Article 1 is Biden to impose a minimum global corporate tax. This article came from the Washington Post. It speaks about Biden using a tax code that's actually going to change the balance as well as the structure of global commerce internationally. This proposed minimum global corporate tax is what he stated to be about 15%. Now, there are objections coming from some lower tax countries like Ireland, and there's also potential non-compliance that they're seeing from both China and Russia. Now, Article 2 talks about the U.S. delaying tariffs in TAC row. This is related to the international taxation of digital services, like we earlier spoke of, about these global social media companies operating throughout these different countries. There's specific taxes that are going to be put on them. So as of right now, they're going to approve 877 million on the UK, and then 383 million on Italian goods, and then 323 million of Spanish goods. What they're actually going to do is delay these tariffs so that they can shift focus onto big tech companies and see how they can tax them. Now, these two articles directly correlate with each other is because one is talking about this global corporate tax that is going to possibly be imposed, and the second one talks about taxes specifically for giant tech companies who operate internationally. With that being said, I'll pass it on to my teammate.
Hello, my name is Tyler Machete, and I'll be summarizing the main points of both articles as well as sharing some of the key facts and pieces of information. The first article, titled Biden Set for G7 Boost in Bid for All Nations to Impose a Minimum Global Corporate Tax, aims to convey Biden's mission to get support from various global leaders in order to implement a corporate tax that will end the cycle of corporate tax cutting that has sapped government revenue around the globe. Furthermore, the author also aims to note that even though there is support for the tax, there are many hurdles still that will make things more complicated. These include possible rejection of the tax by China and Russia, and even certain low-tax nations like Ireland. Additionally, the differences in tax codes found across the world will prove making one single global corporate tax very difficult. Some of the key pieces of information from the article are that Biden is pricing this tax at 15%. The strategy here is to keep it quite low so it gains much more support. Additionally, the author notes that governments around the world spend over $16 trillion trying to battle this pandemic, and this is giving them good reason to want to push for tax and gain some more revenue. The second article is titled U.S. Delays Tariffs in Tech Tax Row. The message being conveyed by the author here is that the U.S. government chose to suspend a tariff on technology companies due to the controversy surrounding the tariff. The author also clarifies that President Biden still plans to implement the tariff, but he wants to provide time to advance the discussion of how to properly impose the tax in a way that's fair. A U.S. trade representative is even quoted saying, "The U.S. is focused on finding a multilateral solution to a range of key issues related to international taxation, including the concerns with digital services taxes." One key fact from this story is that the suspended tariffs are valued at roughly $2 billion in imports. Additionally, the author claims that this issue regarding taxation of tech firms has been in discussion for quite some time now and will actually be discussed by world leaders in the G20 summit as well as at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
My name is Isabel Hernandez Marquez, and I will be covering the integration of articles. So, what is the relevance of the articles? Both articles address two international financial issues. The first one being an unrealized government revenue opportunity. This signifies a potential for the U.S. to alleviate pandemic related costs and discourage U.S. corporations from shifting assets and incomes abroad by reducing tax incentives. The second issue is a tech tax retaliation. This is where both articles describe key details causing temporary tariffs on imports from 6 countries who decided to place a digital service tax on revenues and not profits. On the slide, you can see a picture in the lower right corner depicting what revenue means and what profit means. So how do the articles complement each other? Together, the articles give a more detailed financial description of timelines involved. What I mean with this is the explicit mentioning of specific catalyst events for the U.S., listing significant international entities and their feedback for topics at the G7 summit that's coming up, and finally, describing future obstacles in a global tax implementation. The next question is, what different viewpoints do the articles take from the same topic? First of all, the Washington Post article provides factual data with the help of U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai, who is better able to paint a picture from our home perspective. She does so by mentioning key catalyst events, predictions, and feedbacks on prior tariff events. Next, the BBC article does give a more well-rounded overview because it includes significant entities in the involvement of external factors in the two international issues, such as how negotiators are wrestling with securing agreement at the G7 summit that's coming up, the IMF director's estimates on pandemic global costs, and a realistic opinion of unified global tax code from notable corporate accountants. The final question is, what did we learn more from reading both articles? With the help of both articles, the reader can understand how key detail portrays a better overview of the international financial issues, such as when the tech tax started and how tech giants are reacting to it, how a year-long investigation caused a change in profit to revenue tax from countries abroad, and finally, what a G7 goal looks like to sustain a global tax cooperation from U.S. multinationals.
My name is Tristan Machete, and I will be discussing the relevance of our articles to the course. The chapter we are covering in this presentation is International Trade Theory. Both of these articles delve into broad parts of international trade, but they also both cover specific topics. The BBC article talks about how the United States is strategically using tariffs to combat the high taxes on U.S. technology companies set by other nations. This directly connects to the chapter in two sections, Section 5.2 and Section 5.5. Section 5.2 talks about mercantilism. Now, we acknowledge that mercantilism is an outdated and inherently flawed system. However, the second pillar is still applicable today. The second pillar of governmental intervention talks about how the government used to oftenly intervene in trade with the hopes of keeping a surplus and keeping their end of the business on the benefiting side. These tariffs do exactly that by making sure that there are consequences against those foreign nations who place high taxes on our companies. Section 5.5, also known as New Trade Theory, ties in through one of its main fundamentals. In the book, it is stated that it is the duty of the government to assist home companies. Without the help of the government when operating abroad, companies could be effectively bullied around by foreign governments. The second article, the one from the Washington Post, talks about a new proposed tax by President Biden that consists of a 15% minimum global corporate tax. At the beginning of Chapter 5, it states that one of the main benefits of international trade is the boost to wealth and job creation. This connects to that by allowing countries a greater minimum return on international trade. In a sense, almost a way to even the playing field by making sure the corporations are paying their fair share.
Hello, my name is Tyler Curran, and I will be briefly reviewing some of the key takeaways from this presentation. Federal governments around the globe have spent an estimated $16 trillion battling the coronavirus pandemic, and because of this, many of those governments are severely in debt and hurting for money. This has left many governments, including the U.S. federal government, to look for new sources of revenue as well as redefine existing sources of revenue to try and close the gap on their debt accrued during the pandemic. One of the biggest streams of revenue the U.S. federal government noticed that they were missing out on was in big tech corporations' income taxes. Many big tech corporations had and have been moving their income taxes on paper to low-income tax jurisdictions, which means that they'd only be paying a fraction of the tax that they would be if they had filed their taxes in the U.S. Due to so many big tech companies hiding U.S. government-owed income tax revenue, as well as foreign nations increasing taxes on U.S. tech firms, the U.S. federal government proposed roughly $2 billion in tariffs to those nations that had increased U.S. tech tax. Immediately after proposing the tariffs, the U.S. government halted the tariff enactment to allow for discussion of a 15% global corporate tax. A global corporate tax of 15% would not only increase revenues earned from income tax in low-income tax jurisdictions, but it would also provide justification for the U.S. to raise domestic corporate income tax to 28%.